The comments heard on The View from a Pew are those of Mac McCoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Mac McCoy. I'm sitting across from my co-host Steve, and this is The View from a Pew. It is a program that we do several times a week with different guest hosts. We do one that is with Pastor Gary Hutchins from Sunny Slope Church of Christ. Every once in a while, we get the opportunity to have Delmar Austin in. I enjoy that. And we have a few other pastors that are going to be coming back in now that our studios have been rebuilt. And that rebuild also includes the look that you have when you look at our YouTube, and you'll notice that we have some different things in the studio. For those of you that have never watched this program, this is not television. We do not try to be slick. We don't wear makeup. I don't even wear, well, today I've got one of my favorite shirts on. And Steve, he always looks like this. So if you're thinking, well, you know, they don't look very professional. Well, we're not here to look a certain way. We're here to share things from a theological background and theological point of view. And today we're going to talk about, and I can't say the first word.
Progressivism.
Progressivism.
Correct.
And sin. And I'm going to make an off political incorrect statement. Aren't they the same?
I don't think so. Progressivism, by its definition, if you were to go back a ways, is not a bad thing. If you look at progressivism as a noun, it simply would reflect an advancement, an attempt to go ahead, to make improvements. The way it's been construed and how it's actually being shown in culture, though, is totally a different thing. And that's why I introduce it at this point, because to me, the cultural sin today is progressivism. Or should I say progressivism embodies the sin of our culture.
Okay, so help me and define progressivism. Define that for me, please.
Well, in the way it's being used in the progressive movement, it's basically, in practice, what we want, or what each of us wants individually, we should have. In other words, it focuses totally on selfishness. It focuses in fans envy. In progressivism, as it is being practiced, the movement in the United States is very anti-establishment, anti-history, anti-tradition, anti-religion, anti-institution, mainly the things that make us great as a country.
Now, and let me just ask, and by the way, Steve and I do not talk about the topics beforehand. We don't collude and then figure out how we're going to handle it. I have enough respect for Steve that he does all this. He picks the topics, he writes the stuff out, and so sometimes I just have a question. Now, progressivism.
Yes, let me give background a little bit to this.
Okay.
So progressivism it always has some involvement with a government. It is a movement within the government or against the government, as the case may be. And if you to go back in the origin of progressivism, it really started of any big consequence in the 30s with the New Deal. Basically, at that point, it was included in the New Deal policies, having social insurance programs like Social Security, federal regulations, ours. So in other words, more control of people. And at the same time, government giving us more as though that money is coming from somewhere other than us. right?
Okay.
But it's presented it's quite deceptive because it makes it look like you're getting a free lunch. Now, at that time, is Social Security bad? I'm not judging that for its own, although it's going to go broke probably. But then in the
Not
60s,
till after I'm dead, please.
and by the way, you brought up makeup, and I think I shared that with you, but why would a woman put makeup on her forehead?
I don't know.
This is a loaded one to
Now,
make.
are you going to make a joke against women?
Well, it's not
'Cause I'm going to get in trouble.
Well, I would say this: when after God made women, did He say, "Oh my, what have I done"? I don't know the answer, but the reason a woman would put makeup on her forehead is to make up her mind. So let that be as it falls, as it will.
Okay, here, let me run my disclaimer again, just so we know here. Yeah, the opinions of Stephen Arntz are not necessarily the opinions of anybody else that's listening. I don't tell jokes about women because I get in trouble when I get home.
I really
I have
just,
daughters.
well, I do too, but you know what? My main concern on this program is to evoke a response. In other words, if you guys don't write in, don't tell us how goofy we are, say, well, I don't agree with that, or say, I do agree with anything, then we've really kind of lost the edge here.
Well, and you can write us at Mac at The View from a Pew, and that is The View from a pew.com. Or you can just go on our Facebook page and make a comment there.
So to go back to progressivism and its
Are you going to
origin,
get in trouble when you get home? Are you going to be grounded to the couch?
I think I passed that already. I mean, I'm 50 some years. We kind of,
Yeah.
we kind of just swing with the punches.
Do
You
they
know?
kind of do? Never mind.
But, yeah.
Just go
So anyway,
quickly. Run.
so yes, progressivism does tie into politics. Let's just address that, because if you have government, you got politics. If you have anything happening at all in the world, you can have some politics. Okay, it's impossible. And so as a result of that, in the 60s and 70s, that's when we had the Great Society, expansion of social programs, and this was a really decisive shift that was aiming toward contemporary liberal progressivism. Yes, I introduced the word liberal and contemporary, both applicable, because in the 21st century, modern progressivism saw a significant rise in the political and cultural currency, especially the Democratic Party following the 2016 presidential election. Now, that's a lot of stuff to try to. Am I equating the Democratic Party with progressivism? If I talk about the Democratic Party committee, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, tell me as an example about Republican progressivism.
I don't think here it's kind of like this. If you talk about liberalism in its pure term, just like progressivism, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what it's become construed to be. So liberalism in its pure form is fine, but in its practice of how it's being done by the liberals, it's not, because what they're doing is taking away what works, trying to reinvent the wheel without keeping the focus on what works, and quite frankly, taking God out of the picture. Now, this is why this ties into why we're bringing it up, because God isn't the focus anymore when you get involved with this stuff. The idols change. Remember early on we did idol, we did past work. It takes all different forms. So pretty soon we got a movement that it becomes the idol in itself. Okay?
Okay, so would the cancel culture be a part of progressivism or just democratic or liberal progressivism?
Well, as I'm talking about it, from what I see, I can only go by actions, not by words.
Okay.
But from what actions I see, even with the Charlie Kirk's death recently, I see Republicans or the Republican Party standing up saying how he was a good man, he represented God well. And I see the Democrats trying to tear him apart as a bad person, saying all kind of evil things, that he was saying hateful things. No, I think instead he was saying words that they hate. People don't want to be reminded of what they're not doing right. People don't want to be directed to do something different. Charlie Kirk, and I'm not trying to defend him or anything, but he was simply had the courage to say what he believed.
Yeah. Now, and I have to tread lightly here. Okay, you don't have to. I do. My example of how, if you're not a Republican in our government, how I see progressive liberalism when it comes to Charlie Kirk is not one Democrat voted to honor Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, it's really, it's
Not one.
I think that's really sad. When you've got a whole party doing everything en masse, there's only two possibilities. One, they all believe it, which is scary in itself. The second is they've all been bought off, they've all been blackmailed. Seriously, because there's no other rationale. No other rationale. There's no rationale. So when people speak out about how that fellow that shot him did the right thing,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to say that is good. No, my friends, when you've got evil and full deception, what is good becomes bad, and what's bad is good. So don't second question. Don't doubt yourself when you say, well, that can't be right. No, it isn't right.
Well, and I don't see Charlie leaning one way or the other than his faith.
Well, the problem has been, I've read quite a little of this, and as I see it, the criticism of him has been taken out of context. They might find an isolated thing, and and it just doesn't have any merit.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you this though, in his show, and I have the whole show written down, recorded. He is very much against what the Democratic Party's doing. And he feels that the Democratic Party has infiltrated our country with illegal aliens intentionally to weaken and to gain control at the expense of any other party. So in that sense, we're dealing with a demonic presence. Whenever you want to run from the truth, when you want twist the truth, when you deny the truth, when you won't accept accountability, what is left?
Yeah, and I think the best example, and you speak your mind, Steve. I want you to do that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to be a little careful here. But to me, the glaring proof of that is when you will allow a man to compete in a woman's sports because they identify as a woman. I'm sorry, I don't get that.
Well, whenever you deny God's presence, deny His law, certainly man and woman is pretty clear cut. I mean, I don't think God made it too complicated, and but boy, we have twisted that to God knows where.
Well, and just to be clear, I'm not anti-trans or even anti-gay. Okay. What I always say is you could be a murderer, you could be divorced 25 times, you could be gay, you could be trans, you could have had an abortion. I want to be that representative of Jesus here on earth, that one of those people would know they could come and discuss theology with me, and I would not judge them. That's where I try to be like Jesus.
Well, I think, not to dwell on Charlie Kirk, but I mean, his wife certainly went to the front of the whole group of people and said, hey, I forgive him, because that's what Jesus would do. And, I think really people that don't have God in their soul cannot grasp that. I don't think they look at that as a weakness. Yeah. They say, my goodness, look at her. She's given in. She didn't have any fight in her. It's just, it's just not the way it is. But, what we're missing right now, mainline Protestantism has lost interest in the transcendent truths of Christianity. And that means that they have lost sight of God being a supreme, uncreated, sovereign being. Yeah. And so what happens is they're looking for substitutes, and all of these things don't satisfy. And then it creates more frustration because that person becomes more and more dissatisfied, and it just becomes ruinous.
Well, and it becomes like it's toxic.
Yeah, and our whole culture becomes spiritually bankrupt when we cannot afford to stay silent. That's the silent majority has got to speak up. And I know I just read recently that the number of chapters with Charlie Kirk has gone from, oh, what was it? I wrote it down. It's so extreme
Yeah.
that if I didn't write it down, quite frankly, I wouldn't even be able to repeat it because I wouldn't have believed it. The Turning Point USA went from 2,000 chapters to 32,000.
Yeah.
Now, whatever he thought he was going to accomplish, it did not work.
Yeah.
Because anytime God will not let the truth be stomped out, it isn't going to happen.
You know, it's interesting. On a related note, I just posted something on my Facebook page, and it was a poll taken. And I'm not big into polls, but there was only 577 U.S. residents from 13 to 24 who participated in this, and that's not a big number.
No.
Issues that young people say impact their mental health to the point of disrupting daily life. And the number one was loneliness. Number two was family issues. Number three was having no clear path, school, friendship issues, affordable basic necessities, and it goes on and on.
I might add, doing podcasts would probably be right there too.
Yeah, no, they don't put that on there. What really surprised me was the bottom five, the things that they were least worried about: climate change, abortion restrictions, racism or xenophobia, homophobia or transphobia, and gun violence.
Well,
those were the bottom 5 out of 20.
Well, again, it comes back to me versus we. That's somebody else's problem. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's now one of the things that get involved here too, is the churches, and we're going to talk too about this. The churches are a little bit misled sometimes, in my opinion, because they're doing too much. They're making way too much effort to demonstrate their similarity to culture than the differences.
Yeah.
In other words, we are not to blend in, we're to stand out. Charlie Kirk did that. He had the courage. I think we're lacking courage. I think we're lacking courage on the administrative side, in the pastors and administrative. I think I think it's in the body. I would get two churches three mainline Protestant churches that are doing a terrible job of not doing this, of just losing themselves in the culture. One is the United Methodist Church. The other is the Presbyterian Church, and the third is the United Church of Christ. They're all absorbed into secular culture, and that's been well supported. And guess what? When that happens, what do you think happens to membership, giving, and everything else goes with it? What do you think happens?
It goes down.
Now, why would that be? If you become more what you want, more what people want, does that mean that's what they need?
Yeah. No.
That's the difference.
No, that's
And so let's say that we had an inkling for salt water, so we just gave them more and more salt water. Well, it might be what they want. It might taste good, but they're not going to live very long.
Going to kill them.
Going to kill them. So sometimes we have to be given what is not what we want. And so that's just a thought about that.
And for me, I lived my first 50 years as a God guy. And what I mean by that is I would say to people, I don't get this Jesus thing. If you got the Father, why do you need the Son? And if somebody asked me if I was a Christian, I'd say, no, you people are weird. Then Jesus came along, and my term is he mugged me. And I began to see life through a completely different set of eyes. And when I lived a life where God was not the most important thing, maybe he was third or fourth on the list. He was not even the top 3 in my life. All those things made me idolize things I could touch.
I was thinking this morning about one thing. I was thinking sometimes people that don't have any Christian background or anything, maybe one, or maybe do, and they drift for a while. But I think one of the things that may scare them, and understandably so, is they think, okay, Jesus, the Trinity, God, they're all perfect. I can't be perfect, so why should I try? I think there's that lack of hope. There's that giving up, which is a lack of knowledge of God and a lack of faith.
Well, and my how do I say this? The thing that I'm disturbed about the most is people who aren't. I want to be careful here. People who don't agree with having a relationship with Jesus as the number one thing, and relationship and number one are the operative phrases there. They don't realize that there's more to this life than being quote unquote alive on this earth.
What is the difference between going to church and listen to a pastor, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical,
Okay.
that says, I'm glad we're not like these other folks? And just hold that thought.
Yeah.
And instead of that, let's compare watching Jimmy Kimmel, who says, boy, I'm glad we're not like those other folks. Do you see the similarity? Do you see the parallel? Jimmy Kimmel's losing membership, losing reader. I mean, guy, same thing with churches that do that. Because what is that? It's not a lifting toward anything. You've got to reach for something.
Yeah.
If you're going to just fall down, that's pretty easy to do. And you don't need any leadership for that.
Well, and it's the old term, if you try to be everything to everyone, you'll end up being nothing to no one.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyway, the show is called The View from a Pew. My name's Mac McCoy. My co-host is Steve Arts. And we talk about theology from the view from the pew.
See, one thing that we Christians need to be, and I'm definitely try to be this way, I'm definitely countercultural.
Countercultural.
Yeah, if the culture's doing this, I don't want to do that. In other words, most of the time, the culture isn't telling us what's best. It's telling us what's popular.
Well, as a man who sits with you in a room that's about 8 by 8, remember that showering is okay. That's not cultural. just so I'm just giving you a bad.
I'm just laughing because that's the best expression. It's like saying, gee, Mac, that was sure interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Or as they say in the South, aren't you a sweetheart?
Yeah, bless your little heart.
Yeah, that's the most sarcastic.
That's a closing. So
yeah.
Mac challenges me every week. He calls me. He pesters me, and he says, well, maybe not that bad, but he says, I want some word that I maybe have not used. And
yeah.
So
that's true.
That's true. Maybe I don't get pestered by you, but so this one you probably know, but it's such an appropriate word, and that's euphemism. Euphemism, yes.
What does I don't know what that means.
Well,
to be honest with you.
Euphemisms is when you use a word or some expression that's really meant to mean something else, but it's full deception. So you might call freedom, like let's say a dictator would say, we have freedom. No, they have control.
Yeah.
It's he uses it as a euphemism for freedom. Okay.
Is that the same as gaslighting?
Well, it'd be related, I suppose.
Okay.
I'm not wise enough to say. I've never really thought about gaslighting that much.
I've been studying that because someone who I really respect says that one of the biggest challenges we have with progressivism is they try to make us believe something that isn't true. And sooner or later, many of us, and I'm guilty of this too, I begin to believe it.
One of the things that really bothers me a lot, this thing about climate change, people, the progressives keep talking about it like it's fact.
Yeah.
It's not. No, and it just drives you crazy sometimes. But
Steve, it goes back to the fact that they think they're their own gods.
That's right.
God is not going to allow man to destroy this earth with pollution. God can do whatever he wants to do, and he's not going to let us destroy this earth with the temperature.
At the risk of repeating myself, which I would very, very seldom ever do, unless I intended to, but at the risk of repeating, but Whenever I have somebody question me, I say, look what we're doing, and I always ask this one question, and I never get any response. If, the oxygen has got to be at a critical level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the stuff's happened on Earth, and it hasn't changed.
Right.
Who is controlling that?
Yeah.
And nobody can ever answer.
I
Okay.
agree with you.
So the progressives have used education, politics, the media, and the environment to, and this is a big word, but you know it already, indoctrinate us.
Yeah.
And that's where if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one and keep saying it. And why you want to tell a big one is because it's hard to believe, but you keep saying it, they think maybe there's something to it because it's so hard to disprove.
Yeah, and my proof of that is not in politics, it's in advertising. If I see one more picture of a Big Mac that looks like it's about a foot tall, I'm going to scream. You know what, Steve? I've even thought about creating a website where we take what they say in the ad on food
Side by side.
and then you take a picture and send me the one you bought. That to me is, they really think we have stupid written on our foreheads.
Well, you don't want to talk about politicians, but politicians do treat us as we are stupid.
Yeah.
They do, and to some degree, there may be a certain element of truth there, but we have to fight against that.
Now, I must say, coming from the political world, that's not an everybody.
No.
And it's not just one party, by the way.
No.
I come from a state here in Nebraska where we've had some excellent politicians no matter what side
Right.
of the fence they're on. I lived in Iowa, Des Moines, for 40 years, and we have some wonderful senators over there, past and present. A lot of people did not like Tom Harkin because he was a Democrat.
Right.
Tom Harkin was a very, very good man. He was the one that came up with the law about how we treat the access disabled people have to public.
Right.
Anyway, so when we talk about this and we seem to flush it down to one party or the other, that's our mistake, and we shouldn't be doing that on this program. There is no such thing as everybody and nobody.
Now, there's a quote that I kind of think is appropriate here. It's by Jera Goldberg. And what he says is progressivism, liberalism, or whatever you want to call it, back to the euphemisms here, become an ideology of power. So long as liberals hold it, principles don't matter. That's the reality of what we're in. Doesn't care what side of the aisle. But unfortunately, a lot of that has gotten embodied more on the liberal or left side.
Help me understand, Stephen, if you would. Where do you think maybe we've done a little bit of that on the opposite side, the conservative, the faith-based people?
Well, prime example on the Republican side was very stupid. So they reverse Roe versus Wade, right?
Yep.
And they say one of the things we don't want to have happen is legislate that on a national level, right?
Right. But
So-
you just said the operative part of that, on a national level.
So what did the Republican Party attempt to do? Nationalize it. That's what happened. They tried to put abortion as a thing that would be nationally now legislated. That's hypocritical. That was wrong to do. It was dumb, just
Now,
plain dumb.
The administration at the time, though, made it very clear they simply wanted it to go to the direction of the state.
Well, that was the original intent, but it went a step further. I'm just saying, neither side is blameless here. But what happens is there is that reactionary thing where you get some power, then you overdo it. And so
Yeah.
going back to the state, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But then we're going to go ahead and make it a nationwide law, the very thing we're trying to get away from.
Yeah, and I'm not a
No, so that was not. Republicans don't gain friends that way because it doesn't make sense when you don't do the opposite of what you said, right? You don't do that.
Well, and you may have heard me say this before, and then we'll stop talking about abortion. And this is an opinion of mine, okay? You know what Satan hates worse than anything?
I'm scared to say.
Abortion.
You
Because he loses the opportunity to turn that soul against God. That little baby soul goes right in God's hands.
I know you said that, but on the other side, I think he loves abortion because it dehumanizes us
Yep.
more than anything else. How could it not? I was brought up on a farm, and if we had a animal to kill its young, we killed that animal.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
so point counterpoint.
Okay.
I can't agree with you all the time because, well, most of the
I
time.
don't think you ever agree with me.
Well, how do you agree with somebody that's wrong all the time? I mean, what do you do after a while? I go, I say, yep. I nod.
Oh, shoot. Look at the clock. I think we're
I
running
know
out
we're
of
right.
time.
So, every relationship, that's what the world is. It's all about relationship. If it isn't about relationships, we're really done. Now, part of the problem with AI and all this stuff, sometimes we lose relationships, right?
Yeah.
But no relationship can heal if one refuses to confront his own sins.
Yes.
And that's
Very
how.
well said.
So right now, my beef with the progressives, they never admit being wrong. Never.
Right.
And that's wrong because that isn't truth.
And that's not all of them.
No.
But the vocal ones, unfortunately, I believe that runs very high among that group of them.
Well, because of the media and how they've controlled things, they're allowing the minority to control the majority, and that's not the way our government was designed.
Yeah.
This is repeating something as a kind of a closing statement, at least from me. And I know I've said this before, but I just got to say it again because sin will take you further than you want to go, keep you longer than what you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. And that's by R. Zacharias. And I just think that's important to understand because you wonder how we get into this mess. Well, once you start yielding, there's no bottom. There is no bottom.
Say that again.
Once you start yielding to
No, what you said, the quote from Zacharias.
Oh, sin will take you further than you want to go,
Okay.
keep you longer than you want to stay,
Okay.
and cost you more than you want to pay.
For those of you that would like to hear that or know of that, I'm going to copy and paste that off of your notes, and I'm going to put it on my Facebook page right now because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I got that from Brian in my Bible school. And he's got a big ego, but that'll probably just feed it a little bit more. But he's very witty, and he has all these things memorized. And I looked it up and found out who was the originator of it. But there's some talented people out there. We sometimes we just have to really have confidence that we do know what we're talking about. That common sense does prevail. And that we just have to have enough courage. First of all, we have to all have enough conviction to believe in something important and good, and then have enough courage to speak out on it. If either one of those are lost or not there, we really don't have much in life.
Yeah. All right. I just put that on my regular Facebook page with nothing pretty with it, and you can take a look at that. And that is Mac, M-A-C, and then the initial J, and then Michael, and then McCoy, and I'll come up, and if we're not friends, send me a friend request, and I'll accept it. That was very well said, though, by Mr. Zacharias.
Yeah, I can't take credit for it. He said, the one thing I think we all recognize is when somebody's got a great idea, give them credit. I don't ever want to steal a good idea. Sometimes, I thought the other day, why don't we use our odometer as an indicator when to change our oil? We just set it to 0. So I thought, well, that's a great idea. I never thought of it before. And I got a couple kids where I'm changing oil and all this stuff, couple cars. And so I looked it up to see if anybody else has thought of it. Oh, yeah, that's a commonly done thing. And I'm thinking, what an idiot. All my life, and I have 2, there's always 2, sometimes 4, depends on your car. I never thought of doing it. You're looking for scraps of paper. It comes off of the windshield, and you're trying to run around, figure it out. And then you say, oh, my gosh, I'm 1,000 over, or whatever the case is. And so if you haven't do that, my hint to the wise is use your odometer, or at least one of them, to keep track of your mileage.
Well, and if I can add to that, and we're off target here, but
a little bit.
My father very rarely got upset. We were in the car business. When one of the times I saw him the most upset is when vehicles started having that little light that came on that told you to check the engine. And that was built for people to run into the garage, run into the car dealership, and say, oh my gosh, there's something wrong. And the bill goes triple. When it comes to changing your oil, if you use synthetic oil, it's not 3,000 miles anymore. It's about 6 to 8.
Well, it depends on your driving habits too. I try to do it every 5,000, neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you a story though. I had a car where the engine light kept coming on, and to the credit of the dealers, no matter which one I stopped in, I'd swing in and they say, "Don't worry about it." I drove that car for several years. Don't worry about it.
Well, we want to thank you for listening today. This is a wonderful conversation that Steve and I had every week. Again, love to hear from you on some of your ideas, thoughts, and topics. It's Mac, M-A-C, at theviewfromapew.com. Or it's Mac at McCoy, spelled M-C-K-O-Y.net. And thanks for listening.